Hi, this is Gayle Shum, and I would like to welcome you to Composing How to Write a Song or Piece, Part 1. In Part 1, we are going to start with chords as sort of the foundation or structure of our piece. So you hear about a song or piece being in a key, and we can also use the word scale interchangeably with key. So if something is in the key of C, it means that we are using the notes from the scale of C. We are going to start with the key of C just because people feel most comfortable in C. There's no black keys in the scale of C. So we're going to proceed from there in the following videos. So let's say I want to write a song or piece in the key of C. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what the chords are in that key. So here's what I mean. If you were to build a chord on each note of the scale, it would look like this. The first chord would be a C chord. Now, in order for us to call it a triad, the notes have to skip a key and they also have to skip a letter name. So the triad that we're going to build on the first note of the scale, C, is a C chord, and it's a C major. Alright, so you can see I'm skipping a key and I'm also skipping a letter. C, skip D to E's, skip F to G. We're going to do that same sort of thing on each one of the scale degrees. So the first chord is a C, the second note of the scale is a D. So if I follow the rule and I skip a key and I skip a letter name, I have D, F, and A. That turns out to be a minor chord, that's D minor. Now this is going to be true for all of the different keys. We're just starting in C and it's the most visual and easy to remember, but you can do this in any key. This 2 will always be a minor, the 3 will always be a minor, the 4 will always be a major, the 5 will always be a major, the 6 will be a minor, and the 7 will be a diminished. We'll talk more about that a little bit more slowly. Alright, so we know we've got a C major on the first note. On the second note of the scale is D. That turns out to be a D minor, as we said. Alright, so the third note of the scale is E. I'm going to build a chord, a triad on E, by skipping a key and skipping a letter name, and I've got E, G, B, which is an E minor chord. Alright, I'm going to take the fourth note of the scale, which is F, and build that triad by skipping a key and skipping a letter name. We've got F, A, C, and that's an F major. The 5 chord, or the chord that's built on the 5th note of C, is a G chord, and that turns out to be another major chord. The 6th note is A, and by skipping a key and skipping a letter, I have an A minor. The 7th note is B. I am skipping a key and I'm skipping a letter, and that turns out to be a B diminished. Because if you know your chords, you would know that this is a B major, this is a B minor, but we can't use those chords in this scale because we've got black keys in there, so it has to be this one. So that turns out to be a B diminished chord. Alright, we know it's diminished because from the major, the middle note is lowered and the top note is lowered. Alright, so no matter what key you're in, it's going to be the same pattern. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Alright, just to prove it to you, I'm going to just take another random key and let's do D flat, and you will see it's the same pattern. So it's major. Oh, first of all, here is the D flat scale. Alright, so we're using all the black keys plus the 2 whites, F and C. Alright, so the first one, the chord built on the first note of the scale, is a major. Second is minor. third is minor, fourth is major, fifth is major, sixth is minor, and the seventh has to be diminished. We're not going to spend too much time on this now, but if you were to figure it out yourself, you would see those are the notes that have to be in each one of those chords in order to be in the D-flat scale. So, back to C. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Okay, so when we are approaching writing a song or a piece, we have to decide on our chord progression. If we are approaching it from the chords first, we are going to put together a chord progression. And a chord progression means just a series of chords that we like the sound of in a particular order. So in the next video you will see me approaching the song from the melody rather than necessarily from the chords, but right now this is one of your choices, is to approach it from the chords. So let's say I would like to write a simple song with two chords. Now we have something called the primary chords, and that is the chords that are built on the first, the fourth, and the fifth note of the scale. They're called the primary chords because so many songs and pieces include the first, the fourth, and the fifth chords of the scale. We call this the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord for obvious reasons. This is the 1, the 4, and the 5 in terms of its scale degree. So the primary chords in C are C, F, and G. There are a whole lot of pieces and songs that include these 3 chords in them. Some of them include other chords in the piece as well, but some are just limited to those 3. Some are only limited to 2. For example, there are a couple of pieces I can think of that have just a 1 chord and a 5 chord in them. So let me play you a couple. One is the Barcarolle by Offenbach. And even the second part. It goes on to add some other chords into the mix too, but that's sort of the main theme, and it just consists of the 1 chord and the 5 chord. Another song that has just the 1 and the 5 chords in it is the song Jambalaya by Hank Williams. And even the next part. It just has 2 chords throughout the whole song. Another possibility is to use the 1 chord and the 4 chord, like that song Everyday People by Sly and the Family Stone. That song has only 2 chords throughout. So in the first examples I used just the 1 and the 5, and in the Sly and the Family Stone song I used just the 1 and the 4. Okay, now some songs have 3 chords. They use those primary chords we were talking about, the 1, the 4, and the 5. One of the greatest examples of that is the song Wild Thing by the Troggs. That's a great example, using the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord throughout. That's what it does for the whole song. Also, in terms of a classical piece, is Vivaldi's Spring. Another example of just 3 chords in a piece. Another possibility is to have more than just 2 or 3 chords. A great example of a song that has a lot of different chords in it is Lean on Me. In Lean on Me, we are going to have 1, a minor 2, the minor 3, a 4, a 5, and even a 7 diminished that I'm going to play down here rather than up here. Okay, so here's Lean on Me by Bill Withers. So you can see that just incorporated a whole lot of the chords from our scale. The only chord that we haven't covered in any of these songs is the 6, the minor 6, and I thought about a song for that would be Let It Be by the Beatles. 5, there's the minor 6. So that had a 1, a 5, a 6, which is a minor, a 4, a 1, a 5, and then the 4, and then a progression, and a descending bass line back down to C. So there are a lot of choices for you when you are writing your song. If you want to approach it from a chord progression, you can use any of the chords that we build from the scale by just skipping a key and skipping a letter name when you play a triad on each one of the scale degrees. Now there are other chords that you can also use that are not in the scale, but we're going to talk about that later when we talk about the circle of fifths. So I just wanted to tell you to please go to our blog, which is blog.upperhandspiano.com, and you will see there a chart that you can download with these chords and how they play out for any one of the major scales, the way I showed you on C and on D flat. And it will show you the major, the minor, the major, etc. in a chart. So you might want to go and just print that out. Okay, so I will see you in the next video when we are going to talk about melody.